Here's how to write the MCAT even when you're brokely broke, okay? Welcome back to the community of support. My name is Deb, and I'm officially a second-year medical student at Dalhousie University in Halifax. Yes, we made it through 1 year. We survived. We did not thrive, but we survived. So today we're going to be talking about how to write the MCAT on a budget and not breaking the bank to get into medical school, okay? Medicine historically has just really been an exclusive club where it was really hard to apply or even get in if you didn't really have the funds to support you. And it still is that way in many ways. It's still a very expensive process. It's maybe $600, I believe, to write the MCAT. Right now, and that's just to sit and write the exam. That doesn't take into account all the costs associated with if you're taking a course or if you're buying books. Those things can really range. Once you start adding things up, this can be a very, very expensive process, and that doesn't even include actually applying to schools. This is just writing. So the first tip that I would give is to make sure that you approach this like you're only writing it once. So it's something we talk about also in our other video where we're talking about how to study for the MCAT. But it's really important, especially if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of discretionary funds to kind of throw towards this exam. And of course, if it doesn't work out and you have to rewrite, there's no shame in that at all. But it's really important to just make sure that we're approaching this as if you're only going to write it once, because that mindset is really needed to make sure that you're giving it your all the first time. Because if there's a chance that you don't have to write again, that you can really do it once, then that's definitely a huge amount of savings down the line. If you're really not sure how to study, make sure you check out our video on how to study for the MCAT. We really do break it down on how to be intentional, how to approach this and get the score that you need to get into medical school so that you only have to do this one time. The second thing that I would say is to look around for all the free resources that are available to you. So one really extreme thing you could do is you can essentially get through this without actually having to buy books or sign up for a course. So if you look on the AAMC website, which I'll link below, there is a list of the topics and the information that is tested on the MCAT. And so technically, theoretically, it is possible to create a kind of study plan for yourself where you might not actually need to purchase books to know what's going to be on the exam. So you can really take this list if you're really someone who is self-studied and really believes that they can do it. You can take this list and really map out how you're going to study. Use your own books that you might have had from undergrad, or look online for other resources to learn. One really amazing resource for something like this would be Khan Academy. They have just this entire section dedicated to the MCAT, and it has video tutorials, just really everything broken down into the sections that are on the MCAT. So however, obviously it might not be complete, so there might be information missing. You want to make sure you're supplementing it, especially if you choose this method. Like, use as many different resources as possible. Make sure that you're really, really well-rounded in all the information that's on that list. It is definitely a lot more work, I would say, but it is an option. But a little bit less extreme option is to still get the book or course or whatever resource you decided to use, but just making sure that you're also taking advantage of the free resources. So again, like, I use Khan Academy even with the resources that I already had. Some schools will put on mock MCAT exams, so you can go in and test your hand, and if you really time it properly, you could actually use those mock MCAT sessions as part of some of your pre-tests. So if you go back to our video on how to study, you'll see that we talked a lot about testing yourself and using the results of those tests. And so if you want to go and do one of those mock MCAT sessions, you could really use that as a good baseline to get an idea of where you stand. But I'm just not sure if they would actually give you the results after that. So you would really just be using it as just for the numbers, but I don't think you would be able to go back and review your answers. So keep that in mind as well. But again, looking at those resources, the community of support does have a free MCAT course that runs every summer, and if you are a member, you have an opportunity to apply and can be accepted and be able to take this free course, which will really help you save money in the long run. So that's another perk of being part of the community of support. And if you haven't clicked that link below, make sure that you check us out and get yourself access to these resources. The third point I would say, depending on how much support you need, if you feel like you can't afford to pay for the actual sit-down exam part, which I would say probably costs the most out of everything, there is an MCAT fee assistance program. So this is with the AFMC. I'll link that below as well. It's basically just a program that takes into account people who need the financial support and is able to supplement their MCAT fee up to a certain amount. I think it might even be fully covered. So that's amazing because you don't have to pay for that. So if that applies to you and you feel like you can't afford the exam, definitely check it out. But the last thing I will say in regards to all the points that I've talked about is to really plan ahead. So I think for you to save the most money and to really get a good idea of how this is going to work, you need to kind of plan ahead pretty far. One of the reasons for this is that a lot of these assistance programs and free MCAT courses, these mock MCAT exams, a lot of them are held pretty early or at different times, or you might need all kinds of documents submitted, or it might have a long turnaround time. You want to make sure that you're planning months in advance for these things if you plan to apply to one of these programs. The other thing is that you want to get a good idea of how much this whole thing is going to cost you. And to do that, you need to know how you're going to study. So you need to, ahead of time, know how you're going to study, and then use that to plan ahead on how much everything's going to cost you. Once you plan that ahead, you can kind of see how much it's going to cost you overall, and then you can start crossing things off based on what free resources are available to you. Like I said, getting books from your friends is a huge one. If you have people who have written and still have their books left over and they're able to give it to you for free or at a discount, then you're able to cross that off of your planning budget and say, okay, so I have saved $300 right there. If you're not going to apply for the fee assistance program, it still helps to know these things because you can start putting money towards these goals. So it's really, really difficult to wake up in one day and throw out $600 for an exam. It's not difficult for everyone, but if you're watching this video, I would assume that it might be difficult for you as it was for me. So what you have to do ahead of time is know how much you need and start saving for it accordingly. The other thing that I did do too when I was planning ahead that I think could work for a lot of people, if you're a Canadian citizen or permanent resident and you've been getting student loans in undergrad, something that they do is something that you can also look into is reaching out to student loans and seeing if you can get more money towards your MCAT fee or towards your application. So let me explain how this works because this is something that I did. Okay, so when you're still in undergrad, you can actually apply for reviews on your loans. So if you didn't get the amount that you needed, you can actually apply for reviews. I'm not so sure if they don't always really accept those. Those can get rejected if they don't feel like you're asking for something that they should give you. But what I also did was there's also an option when you're graduating in your final year of undergrad where you can actually apply for a little bit more money up to a certain amount, and they will give you a certain amount of money to help you kind of round up your graduation. So when I was graduating, I applied for those extra funds, and it was really to support me because I was going to be graduating. I needed to be able to continue to pay my rent. I needed to finish up some fees, and I did state in it that I will also be using some of the money to pay for my MCAT and apply to medical school. And so by the end of for my fourth year of undergrad, I got an extra grant, or not grant, it was part of my loan, so you do have to pay it back, but I got an extra influx of cash from the government that was able to support me throughout the summer when I was writing, studying, and even applying to medical school afterwards before I got my first job. So it does mean taking on more debt, and if you're already in a lot of debt, then you might not think that's the best option, but that's just another thing that you can do. So I hope that was helpful. We've talked a lot about this, and I really hope that we've given you some good options here to get you started. If you have any more questions, make sure you drop it in the comments below. Make sure that you keep an eye out for our next few videos coming up. We're going to be having a lot about saving money while also applying to medical school, because that's also something that takes a lot of your cash out of your account, but we can help you save a little bit more in that process. Make sure that you're subscribed to us so that you know when that's coming out. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe.